Hi everyone, welcome to the Startup Operator Podcast. I'm Roshan, and today I'll be speaking to Vargab Bakshi, who is part of the founding team at Shopify India, and he now leads international growth there. We'll talk to him about what it was like building the Shopify ecosystem in India and what he does today. Welcome Vargab. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Roshan. It's quite exciting to be a part of this series.
Okay, just to set context, I think it'll be helpful for you to, describe in brief your journey up until this point. So, how did Shopify happen? What had you done before that, and what have you done since?
All right. So I presently take care of partnerships at Shopify's international team, and my journey till here has been quite an interesting one, and perhaps very different from the usual journeys that one hears about. Going back, let's say 25 years, I am a Bengali who was brought up in Hyderabad. So all of my schooling happened there. I did my computer engineering from the University of Pune. Um, and post that, I came back to Hyderabad and I joined Google in their user generated content team. So there, of course, being a part of a company like Google was very enriching, a learning experience that I'm very indebted to all the people who helped mentor me there, and I learned a lot about product and process. So my passion for technology was goes back to my engineering days. I could never crack Premier Institute, but I've always been very passionate about technology, learning products, and being close to what the web and the internet had to offer. So even in my engineering, in my final year, my project was on Google's architecture, and that really had an impact on me, and that's why I tried really hard to get through in the company, and then I went on to join Google. Very soon after joining Google, I remember I used to literally sleep in the Google office. This was in Google Hyderabad, and Google's offices are very beautiful and they're very well equipped, as you know. So there's food, there's Red Bull, there's ice cream, there's everything. So
Of course.
I used to stay at the office, literally never go back. And some of my friends, we used to even play table tennis at 2:30, 3 o'clock at night at Google, and it was just a very different experience for someone who just was out of college and was just blown away by the sheer beauty of the office. So I spent a lot of time in office. I used to spend a lot of time learning more about Google products, and I was doing much more than my job entitled. And that was a part of my learning process. So I learned a lot on my job. I think in 6 months of me joining Google, I got a promotion. I became a training team lead, even though I was the youngest person on the team. I became a team lead where I was managing people who were far more experienced than me. I in training, teaching is a kind of a craft which will help you learn things better. So they say when you teach something to someone, you are able to learn that subject better. I think that happened to me as well. I became a very confident speaker when I started training different people. I also started naturally becoming a mentor because I was helping people learn the product and process better. So I was basically training internal employees of Google on how to work on various products of Google user generated content. I learned from the best. My manager that time was Mr. Ajit Kumar. He's still at Google. There was Mr. Jamin Jose, who was the senior program manager at Google, and who even started a company which is the Uber for ambulances, called Ambi.
Oh,
Then There was Mr. Mark Hewler. I think he's now director or vice president at Apple Maps. So I learned from the best folks in the industry. Exposure is very important, as you know, Roshan. Because I mean, especially, the better people you are around,
Yeah.
the more you learn, and that learning curve becomes better and better with with the kind of people you mix with and learn from. There are some people who learn from books. There are some people who learn from people and experiences. I'm the latter. So I generally like learning from people, and
Yeah.
every little thing that they say, has an impact on me. So I actually even had the chance to interact in meetings with people like Marissa Mayer, who was the senior vice president of Google at that point of time, and then she went on to become the CEO of Yahoo. Very famous personality. So I had given presentations to her about some projects that I was working on. The product manager of our team that time was Mr. Manik Gupta, who was the chief product officer of Uber till recently. So these are people who went on to become, big figures across the globe. Even Brian McKellen, who sold his company Keyhole to Google, which became Google Maps. So
Right.
I was in his org, so I had great interactions with him as well. So I think my Google experience in about I think a little more than 24 months was a lot about learning product process, becoming a becoming great at my craft, and also learning from some really good figures in the industry. Post that, so at Google I realized that it's gonna be, you either are a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond. So
Right.
and I realized that while working at Google was awesome, I would have to figure out ways how I can grow in my career. And at that time, e-commerce was coming into the country, very early days, and I was
So it's 2013, 14, yeah?
yeah, this is 2011ish.
Oh,
uh,
okay. Yeah,
so
that's early.
yeah, and so I had joined Google in 2009, and in 2011, I had started seeing that internet is not just going to be about Google, but it's going to be much more, especially around e-commerce and how business is going to be impacted, how distribution is going to change forever, and that's how I thought that I should get into e-commerce. Back in the day, there was a company called MartJack,
Right.
which was later acquired by another company called Capillary Technologies. Um, so I joined Marjack after Google. I headed their training and relationship management division. I managed a team of 6 people, all MBA grads. For someone who's a computer engineer, hasn't done an MBA, well, that was quite a feeling. Sometimes I look back, and I'm grateful to my team that I also learned a lot from them. And it was a great experience managing that team, learning from them, helping Marjack grow its clientele across India and in Asia. And during those 2 years at Marjack, I was always looking at what Shopify was doing. So Shopify had started in 2005, 2006, even though the company became popular much later on.
Mhm.
So around 2010, 2011, I had already started checking out what Shopify was doing. And it was really, really exciting to me. And even though nobody really knew about Shopify back in the day, this one guy sitting out of India was writing to the COO of Shopify and the leadership at Shopify saying that I'm a massive fan, based out of India, and I'm absolutely in love with the product that you have built. And someday I would love to work for your company. And the CEO, took notice, wrote back to me, and that's how we started speaking, and that's how basically I joined Shopify, and I became their first employee in India and Asia Pacific. But
Right.
I was the second international hire globally. Um, this was pre-IPO, so I
Yeah.
joined them, before the company even went public.
So
Yeah.
Couple of things from everything that you've mentioned thus far. Right. So one is this learning by osmosis, which I think is just I mean, it's just a fantastic thing, really. You'd rather learn from people than from any other resources. And the second is the sheer amount of hustle you've put in to kind of get to where you are at this point of time. So yeah, I mean, so you wrote to the CEO of Shopify, and then what was that exchange like? How did you become employee number one in India?
All right. Okay. So this is. I'll actually break it down. So so I wrote to him, and he mentioned that Shopify is slowly expanding its operations in Asia with a company called Singtel, Singapore Telecommunications, and that's where I applied at Singtel Shopify, and I got through. So I was on the payrolls of Singtel, Singapore Telecommunications, which was reselling Shopify in Asia.
Ah, okay.
And I was in charge of training all salespeople, all support people, being their public spokesperson for Shopify in India and Asia back in the day. So I was doing all of these conferences, and Singtel basically owns 40% of Airtel. So I was training, I went to all 26 offices, Airtel Circle offices in India, and I was training all of their SME teams, their cloud teams, and distribution teams, all of them, to help sell Shopify in India. So that's how I basically started working for Shopify on payrolls of Singtel. But then Singtel and Shopify, basically that relationship just was there for a year and a half or so. And then once that relationship dissolved, I joined Shopify directly, and on their payrolls. And
Right.
that's how that happened. But one of the key things as a takeaway for listeners of this podcast is, if you feel strongly about a product and if you want to work for a certain company, you should try and build relationship
Yeah.
with people in that company. And that the way you build relationship is also very different from what I see. People reach out to me on LinkedIn all the time, Roshan. You have seen them too, right? There are like hundreds of reach outs coming
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, but then how many of them really catch your interest, right?
Mm.
How many, like, if somebody comes and tells me, well, this is the background work that I've done, I know XYZ about the product, this is what I think, you guys are doing great, but this is what I think you guys can improve on, then you have my attention, right? And I think that's something that I did, because when I had reached out to Shopify, the CEO, and I remember, I used to say that, well, I love Shopify, I love everything that it's doing, but hey, here's what something different that you could do, and this is what I would love to build for
Yeah.
you. And those were the things that actually made a difference. So then I got hired by his protege, right hand guy. So the CEO of Shopify is Harley Finkelstein. He is a hero figure for me in my life. His right hand person is Mr. Brennan Lowe. He was the one who hired me, and he was my boss, so I reported into Brennan for the longest time. Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I was talking to someone who was part of the founding team at Uber this week, and he was saying that Uber, when it launches new cities, it's just a three-member team, right? In your case, what was it like being like a one-man team in India? So what was your mandate like? What were some of the early challenges, and how do you go about solving them?
So yeah, so first off, the biggest problem was the time zone problem. So I was the only guy on this side of the world,
Mhm.
in India and Asia. And everybody else was in Eastern time. They were all in Canada. So and that's almost an 11-hour time
Yeah.
difference, and it was hard. It was hard because you know. I used to work in the mornings with all the Indian stakeholders, my partners here. My job was to build a partner ecosystem for Shopify in India. India is not a typical do-it-yourself country. It's not DIY as a culture. It's more DIFM, do it for me. So Indians, especially retailers, online sellers, they look for someone who can build a website for them, do things for them, and that's where Shopify's partner ecosystem comes in. And I basically helped build out Shopify's ecosystem of website developers, designers, digital marketeers, API developers, photographers. So any kind of service or product that an e-commerce merchant might need in their commerce journey is was something that I was looking to do. I was partnering with all of these companies. So in the mornings, I used to basically work with people in India, Asia Pacific, and in the evenings, I was working with my head office, giving them updates about what I was doing here, learning from them around what are the things that I could be doing, and that's how I basically used to manage. I think
Right.
my passion for working. My passion about working for Shopify went a long way in having these 14 to 16-hour days. It wasn't about the number of hours I was putting in. It felt like I never really had a work-life balance. It was just like this was life.
Really sorry for the interruption. I'm just going to take a minute of your time to talk to you about something amazing. Move fast, break things. All of that is great advice for when you have nothing to lose. But once you have some base of users and customers, you cannot really afford to risk quality. So, how do you still ship at lightning pace and delight your users and customers at the same time? Now, that's where Bagasura comes in. Bagasura is a super easy way for people to give and take feedback about the product and, most importantly, close the loop. If you work in a design team, you know screenshots suck. But with Bagasura, you can actually get people to give you very contextual and accurate feedback about your UI and your UX. If you work in a QA team, you know 90% of your time goes in reproducing bugs. But with Bagasura, you can get people to reproduce bugs, document test cases, and resolve things all within Jira itself. Bagasura is being used by some of the leading design and QA teams around, and it's brought to you by the good folks at Mulia Testing, which is one of the best software and QA firms in the world. Do check out bagasura.io, that's bugasura.io, and sign up for a demo today. Ship fast and ship well. So when you are approaching merchants at that point of time, what is your pitch to them? And what are some of the things that they're telling you?
It's funny, Roshan, nobody knew of Shopify back then. This was in 2014, 13, 14, right? In fact, e-commerce in itself was a very new concept back in the day. So very few people knew of Shopify. So explaining what e-commerce is, explaining what selling direct to customer is, followed by explaining what Shopify is and what it does, used to be slightly difficult back in the day.
Yeah.
It's a far easier thing now. The company is popular. The concept is very easy. It's a much more mature segment right now than it was 5 years or 10
No,
years back.
I've said this before as well, that the number of things we take for granted at this point of time is just amazing, because back in 2009 to 10 or whatever, I mean, you really had to convince people on about paying online, for example, right? It was kind of a new thing. So yeah, and you are creating an ecosystem, or you're creating a product category by itself, right? Yeah, go on.
100%. I like you hit the nail, right? Because you're convincing people to pay online because they didn't understand the concept of convenience back in the day. Like they wouldn't trust an online payment. They wouldn't trust an online seller. It's very different now. Like people are, and would have to thank companies like Amazon and Flipkart who have actually educated the market to a large extent, and help people, build their trust on online shopping. So I think kudos to the teams here in India who have bridged the gap from the market, not trusting online sellers to being confident that even though they buy cash on delivery, still that's a massive gap that has been bridged by these companies.
No, I mean, so people say that Flipkart, for example, is just a business that copied Amazon, or Ola just copied Uber and whatever. But all of these large businesses solved uniquely Indian problems, right? Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely. It's I mean, look, this I think this concept of copying is, it's not exactly copying per se. It's a lot about localization as well. I mean, if there's
Anything takes hardcore execution, right? I mean, if it was that easy, then everybody would copy everything, right? So obviously, I mean, there's tons of execution backing all of this stuff.
absolutely, there's a lot of meticulous execution that goes into it. So and localizing is going a long way to providing a great user experience. If you look
Right,
at the Starbucks website in US versus the one in Germany versus the one in India versus the one in Japan, you will see the websites look so different from each other, even though the coffee tastes pretty much the same. So the big learning there is that the user is going to be different in different geographies, and one needs to interact with the user in the way they like it in their land.
yeah,
And that's the concept of software and technology, on how real can it get from a user experience perspective, from a localization perspective. I think such companies have gone a long way to localize these concepts, whether it's
right,
booking a cab ride, or even if it's e-commerce. So while I mean, there have been Shopify like companies in other markets as well, but it's user experience still continues to be at the forefront of technology. And if there is any company that actually is able to do that, excellent. But otherwise, Shopify in itself is striving really hard to localize the product across all geographies
right,
and provide a better user experience for
right.
merchants and partners.
So, I mean, couple of questions, right? So one is that you not only have to, convince customers, you also have to talk to partners, right? Now you are convincing these web developers and, photographers, what have you, to invest in building for Shopify, right? Which I think is a bigger sort of a challenge than, convincing someone, saying that, hey, I'll just put up your shop online, right? Uh, so how did that go? And what are those acute localization elements that you did specifically for the Indian market? So, couple of questions.
Sure. So yeah, it is. When one convincing, like you said, convincing a merchant is different, convincing a partner is different. A merchant is the one who's selling the product online to the buyer. A partner is someone who helps the merchant launch their website online, and do digital marketing and everything to basically be successful online. When you are trying to sell Shopify to the partner, you're trying to convince the partner that, hey, this is the best technology for your client.
Mm.
So that's a different kind of a sales cycle, right? That's when you need to build trust on the product. You need to build a relationship with the partner company, that they want to be a part of the Shopify community. I think while in market teams internationally play a large role in building these relationships with local agencies and partners, it also depends a lot on the product. How good is the product? Is the product intuitive enough for partners also to enjoy? And it has to be a product that partners feel pride in referring,
Yeah,
right? It can, if let's say you are a web developer and you are suggesting a certain technology to your client, and if that technology gives problems to the client later on, you're never going to come back to that technology,
yeah,
because it let you down in front of your client. And that's why it's a massive onus on the product team, to make sure that the product is great. And I'm proud to be working for a company where the product and technology teams are so advanced in the way they think, very futuristic.
yeah.
And that makes the job for people like us who are in the commercial side of things much easier, because the product is
Yeah.
really great.
So everything has to be centered around the product, right? I mean, I say this as a marketing person. I mean, as a marketing person, I mean, my commitment is that I'll bring the person in through the front door, but then, I mean, hey, that person has to stay there, and also has to bring in others, right? So, uh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I have built a couple of e-commerce sites, and I know what a pain it was in, 2013, 2014, building these sites, even though there were other frameworks and stuff. And Shopify has just made that whole experience so simple, right? I mean, it's a non-trivial problem to solve as well, considering how many aspects go into building a shop online.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is very non-trivial indeed, and it also, I think a lot has also gone in from other companies who have matured the space. Let's
Mm.
say for Amazon, like for Amazon has close to 500,000 sellers who sell on their platform, and that has also helped them understand the concept of online selling, and that the ones who found success there were the ones uh, who were the initial guys to try out making their own website and selling direct to customers. I think there's a great opportunity for companies which also develop the entire ecosystem and make this a level playing field for sellers to also sell directly to their customers and build their own brand
Right.
instead of just depending on companies like Flipkart and Amazon, because at the end of the day these marketplaces, they own the customer,
Yeah.
and it is not the seller who owns the customer.
Yeah.
um, and companies like Shopify, what it's trying to do is it's helping these small sellers have their own set of customers, build their own brand, do direct to customer business. And that goes a long way in arming the rebels and making the world a more level playing field for these smaller guys.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point you bring up about platforms, right? Because at this point of time, whether it is social media platforms or e-commerce platforms, what we're realizing is that, uh, I mean, it's always prudent for you as a producer or a seller to kind of own your customers rather than rely on these platforms, because hey, you don't know if somebody is just going to copy your successful product and launch it as their own brand, or you're going to get deplatformed at some point of time for one of the many things that you could be guilty of, right? So yeah, I mean, so in that sense, I mean, Shopify truly creates entrepreneurs, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's in fact one of the most noble concepts of the company, that we are an entrepreneurship company,
Mm.
and almost half of our half of the visitors that come on Shopify's website are people who are looking to start a business. And how
Yeah.
many companies are out there that will help you start a business today, right?
Mm.
So, and Shopify, like we think that how Google is synonymous to search and how Facebook is synonymous to social media, Shopify is synonymous to entrepreneurship and how people want to start a business today. If even if, let's say, Roshan, you do not have a big capital investment to start a business, or you do not have products, you don't have a manufacturing setup, even then you can start a business, a drop shipping business. There are so many small digital marketeers and freelancers who start a drop shipping business from their homes. They are picking up products from AliExpress in China and selling it into the US and Europe. And all they need to do is just add a margin to that AliExpress product, and that profit is their own.
Yeah.
And the shipping, etc., is being done directly by the sourcing supplier to the buyer. And that has, these kind of models have made distribution very different. And that's the advent of the internet, and that's how things have changed forever.
Yeah.
These are things that really inspire me to work closely with people at Shopify and in the ecosystem of Shopify, because it helps people just earn livelihoods.
Yeah.
And that is massive to me personally, to
Yeah.
help people earn their income and not depend on a job all the time to make money.
Right. So, well, entrepreneurship is one kind. There's also the intrapreneur, right? And to me, I mean, you kind of typify the intrapreneur because, hey, employee number one has to do a bunch of these things and move the needle, right? So, what's it like being an intrapreneur, and what are like two or three skills that you think people should possess to become an entrepreneur?
I think, yeah, I typically operate like an entrepreneur, and it's entrepreneurship is about being an entrepreneur inside the company, and that's a great way for people to even grow in their careers. So while the basics would obviously be, to hustle and to make sure that you are acting like an owner, and doing things, taking decisions like the company's owner would be taking. But it's also a lot about having the right growth mindset for not just yourself but also for the people that you work with. It's about making the company a better place to work at. That's what really is your responsibility. I think this owner's mindset is a must, a vital aspect for anyone who's looking to grow faster in the company. And yeah, I think if you're able to create the right work culture, make the place, make the workplace better every day, and making the workplace such that everybody else wants to come and work for a workplace, the one that you are creating. I think that is something that's going to go a long way, not just for you, but even for the entire company, because you're just making this a better place to work at, and
Yeah.
that even keeps you happy. And one needs to get above things like, let's say, office politics and things that often happen when there are hundreds and thousands of people working in a company. I think it is important to kind of build the right trust across people in the company, and be a team player and contribute to the larger good of what the world is meant to see from technology companies.
Right. Yeah, I mean, very well said. And so, in your current role, I mean, you don't just take care of India. I mean, you also look beyond India. Uh, how do you contrast the Shopify ecosystems here versus, let's say, some place in Southeast Asia, for example?
So my role at Shopify has changed a lot over the last 5, 6 years. I have done many roles at Shopify. So when I joined, I used to take care of India's operations. Then I started taking care of Asia Pacific operations. Then I started taking care of emerging markets at Shopify in EMEA, Latin America, and in Asia Pacific. But then as the company grew, we have this concept at Shopify. There's a pioneer, one who starts things. There's a settler, that one who builds on the foundation. Then there is a town planner, one who builds the company like a city. So I am a pioneer. So I have helped various people at Shopify create those foundation in various parts of the world. Today, I focus particularly in partnerships across South Asia. I'm also an evangelist across the international partnerships team, and I help. Shopify is a massive company now. When I joined Shopify, there were a few hundred people. Now it's got more than 7,000 people.
Wow.
And I have always been the subject matter expert, and the helper. And I help various people in the team in terms of training, learning the craft, being an evangelist of the partnerships craft with various other teams at Shopify across the globe. And these are things that have helped me learn a lot. My different role at Shopify have taught me different things. Um, it's in one's career, one sometimes is a generalist, one sometimes is a specialist. So think of a career like a T, and in the T you go wide and learn a lot of things. So when I started taking care of Shopify operations in India in 2014, I had to know a lot of things. I had to understand business development, partnerships, product, but also aspects of legal, aspects of HR, and other things which I probably wasn't great at, but I learned. And then as I probably took on different roles, I went deeper into business development and partnerships. So that is the deeper part of the T. So across anyone's career, you will always see that you sometimes do a generalist role and a specialist role. And it is about how do you keep doing this generalist and specialist and become a stronger T and make a better T in your career. I think that is how every corporate individual should be looking to build their career.
Right. So Shopify itself has grown since the time you joined, right? So I think it was maybe like a couple of $1 billion valuation when you joined, and it's now probably $100 billion business or so, right? And as you said, a few hundred employees to right now being around 7,000 employees. So what changes in that time? So if you were to contrast year one of your Shopify journey versus year five, what changes as a company?
I think the biggest change that I have seen is that I used to work and move really fast back in the day. Like when you're a company of a few hundred people, to move is very easy because you're not moving with thousands of people. You're moving alone, probably with one or two of your teammates. So it's much faster to ship things, move fast, take more risks, and it's easier to communicate, and it's easier to get things done. But when you're in a big company, you have to, move with thousands of other people, and that needs a lot of you know that needs a lot more communication, building trust across the organization, because then every little thing that you do could lead to a great impact or small impact. And that is very deterministic of how you actually get other people in the company to buy into your idea. So doing things back then was faster and easier. Doing things now is a lot about helping people understand context, building a long-term plan that's gonna be impactful. And also, I think creating impact in a smaller company is always easier than creating impact in a big company. Like Shopify is a $1 billion company now. So if I do a business deal which probably gets $1 million, well, I'll get a pat on my back from my boss. But well, for a $1 billion company, it's not going to make massive impact across the company, you know. But back in the day, if I did, even let's say $100,000 increment in revenue, it used to be like, oh wow, that's a great impact in MRR that has come in from India. So things will change as the company grows, and in fact that has been a big part of my learning process at Shopify as well. I'm 32 years old. I have about 10 years of corporate career with me now, 6 years of which I have been at Shopify. So this has been one of the most um, one of the best learning journeys that I've had. They say if you go on Twitter and you look at other employees of Shopify, they'll keep saying that a month at Shopify feels like a year because there's so much happening. So I feel like I've done my MBA too many times now just at Shopify, learning how different people, different leaders in the company, the way they run things, the direction in which they take this mothership is truly enlightening. And I'm lucky to be working for a firm like this.
Awesome. So give us a sense of the Shopify India numbers. How many sellers do you have on your platform right now? What is your vision for the year and maybe like 2 years going forward?
Unfortunately, like as a public company, we cannot give out numbers.
Just an idea of the growth, basically.
Yeah, but Shopify India India's in the top 10 countries of Shopify globally in terms of numbers. Our top three markets are US, UK, and Australia. And there are other markets like Germany, France, Canada, India, China, etc., that are also fast growing markets for us. India at Shopify, India has the largest partner ecosystem. So we have partners which I was mentioning, agencies, developers, designers. These guys are supporting merchants not just in India, but merchants across the world. So you'll be surprised to know that companies like Steve Madden or massive multinational companies all outsource their work Shopify technology work, app development work, etc., to developers in India. And that's one of the faster growing segments in India for Shopify. And I'm excited that I'm able to create this partner ecosystem, which helps merchants all over the globe, get services at an affordable rate and also get better quality services than they would probably get elsewhere.
Fantastic. So, all right. I mean, we're nearing the end of the podcast, and just a few questions. Uh, so, we've been in a sort of a pseudo lockdown, I would say, for a good part of 5 months right now. Uh, any quarantine hack that you've picked up over the last 5 months?
From a Shopify perspective or personal?
Personal, professional, whatever works.
I think the biggest thing that, I mean, after COVID came in, um, we saw thousands of businesses starting to come online, and what has happened in the last 12 years in terms of businesses coming online, it almost is far higher what happened in the last 12 weeks. So the number of businesses that came online in the last 12 weeks is higher than the number of businesses that came online in the last 12 years. So that is something that's very exciting, and something of a learning experience for me, to see so many businesses who lost offline sales quickly make up those sales through their online websites.
So what's that? Yeah, sorry, what's that experience like? I mean, getting these people online, right? People possibly offline retailers who've been impacted by COVID, helping them get online. So what are some of the things that you're learning from them?
We see like a lot of new categories, like restaurants, fine dining restaurants, and groceries, food chains, etc., who are coming online and selling online, which wasn't very common back in the day. When when the concept of COVID hadn't come in, so people still believed that offline sales would trump online sales any given day. But now the concept of commerce has changed. Like, people now believe that even though COVID may be a matter of uh, a few years, but still the commerce world has changed forever, and it's not e-commerce anymore. Now it's commerce.
Um,
Like, online commerce is commerce. It is mainstream commerce, and getting these people online has been one of the prime things that Shopify as a company has done. And yeah, I think it's been very exciting to see so many businesses geared up to sell online, make websites, sell over WhatsApp, social media channels like Facebook, Instagram. I think a lot of companies in the ecosystem have played a big role. Like, we recently announced the launch of Facebook shops, uh, and my CEO Toby was uh, on a video with Mark Zuckerberg. You can check it out online, and where they announced Facebook shops and Shopify launching together and helping these small businesses. I think it's great that the technology community has come together to help small entrepreneurs not just survive but thrive during these times.
right,
Personally, I think, yeah, I've just become more fitness conscious, staying at home because I don't get movement outside of home.
right.
So yeah, I think I'm working out more often than not.
Fantastic. Are you a podcast person?
Yeah,
Any podcast that you would recommend?
I'm very random. I do listen to podcasts, but I like the Tim Ferriss podcast. I think I've learned a lot from it. I also like the Shane Parrish podcast,
Knowledge Project?
The Knowledge Project. I like that one as well. But I'm fairly random that way. I listen to anything that seems to be exciting to me at that moment.
Right. Right. So before I let you go, I would be remiss not to ask you this. Right. You were working remotely before everyone worked remotely, right? Everyone was forced to work remotely. What are some tips that you can offer to people on working remotely and being collaborative with your team and so on?
Communication is key. So keep communicating, whether it's on Slack or whatever is the mode of communication you use in your company. Keep the communication lines open all the time. If you're a team lead, then keep speaking to your team. If you're a team member, keep speaking to others in the team and keep building your trust. it's sometimes difficult to build trust when one is not physically present with the other person. So proximity has always played a big role in building trust. I have built trust with people in an opposite time zone, by just on Slack and on phone calls and in team meetings. So try and build trust with people. Also, please make sure that you are not you have a line between when you want to work and when you don't. Like I in my first 3 years of working at Shopify, where there was no one else in the country or in the continent. It was different that I used to, wake up, brush my teeth, start working, have lunch, again work, evening, have my evening tea, and then work again. So there's been a lot of there's there's been a lot of learning on how not to do things remotely, and one of the key things was having this work life balance. Now I have a strict time where I shut my laptop, let's say evening 7 o'clock. After that, I'm going to shut it, and I'm going to not work at night, whatever it may be. So
Yeah.
having that discipline is super important if you are in the long run. In the
Yeah.
initial years, it was okay, working many hours and not caring. But once you start becoming a little older, you'll realize that you're here for the long run, and
Yeah.
having that discipline really matters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, especially considering that work from home is going to be a norm for a while for us. I think, yeah, you do have to segregate your personal and professional as much as possible and really work in buckets, right? I mean, and do work with more intent than before, I would say, right? It just doesn't happen that way. I mean, work just doesn't happen that way. So hey, this was a lot of fun, Vargab. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your insights. So yeah, thanks again, and thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate your continued support, and this podcast will be available on all popular platforms. If you like this episode, then don't forget to share and subscribe. Also, rate us on your favorite platform. Stay safe and take care.